So UFC Kansas City wrapped up last night, and I want to talk about what's next for the key fighters on the main card. Ian Garry got a great win over Carlos Prates on short notice, pretty good. Zhang Mingyang was able to retire Anthony Smith. Abus Magomedov beat Michel Pereira in a very uneventful fight. Ikram Aliskerov knocked out Andre Muniz. And Randy Brown is the first guy to finish Nicholas Dalby. So I want to talk about where the winners are going to go next in their career and who they're going to face. And even the losers, what are they going to do next? So let's start off with that main event. Ian Garry got a win over Carlos Prates. And I think the next thing for Ian Garry is to face Leon Edwards. Listen, Ian Garry is, I think, 9-1 in the UFC. His only loss coming to Rachmanov, and that was a relatively close fight. And listen, he gave Rachmanov all he could handle and nearly submitted him, I believe, in the 5th round. And Ian Garry proved me wrong and a lot of people wrong last night because he took this fight on a month's notice, just like he did against Rachmanov. And he got the W over Prates, showing he just has that will to win. Ian Garry, maybe he's a decision merchant, maybe he's kind of boring, but if there's anything you can say about him, he finds a way to win. And that's why he only has one loss. And even in that loss, he gave Shavkat all he could handle. He just beat Carlos Prates. He has a win over Michael Page, a win over Jeff New, a win over Neil Magny. Yes, he's a decision merchant. I think his last 4 wins are all by decision. And I think he should face Leon Edwards. Listen, Leon Edwards just got absolutely mauled and ragdolled by Sean Brady. One of the most embarrassing performances by a #1 ranked guy in his division I've ever seen. And he also got ragdolled by Bilal Muhammad before that. And Leon Edwards' last 3 wins over against aging Usman and aging Covington. So it ain't looking too hot for Leon Edwards in 2025, whenever this guy's best win, like the last 3 or 4 years, is just Usman and Covington. So they used to train together. There's a bit of beef between them. I think Ian Garry versus Leon Edwards is the obvious fight to make next. This will give Ian Garry a chance to break into the top 5 because although he has some solid wins, if you look at his resume, Ian Garry, he doesn't have like that breakout performance against like a top 5, top 6 guy. So I think Leon Edwards is the fight to make. Leon Edwards doesn't have much negotiating power right now. He's on a 2-fight losing streak, so book him versus Ian Garry. In the co-main event, Anthony Lionheart Smith, if you look on the right, man, his illustrious, beautiful UFC career, finishes the UFC career with 13-12 record. Challenged John Jones for the title, and man, on paper, I think Anthony Smith was the GOAT. I mean, if you look on the right, the amount of UFC belts this guy was able to achieve over his UFC career, how many is that? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 belts. It's actually quite insane that Anthony Smith is still not getting the respect he deserves because on paper, he has 10 title defenses, and he's defeated the likes of Ankalaev, Pereira, Jamal Hill, and all those other guys. So it's nice to see Anthony Smith hanging up on top. He's been an amazing fighter, ambassador for the sport, and now he can ride off in the peaches in Creamville knowing he was able to defend that light heavyweight strap more than anybody else. And like I said, man, on paper, he's the GOAT. Zhang Mingyang didn't really have a chance against Anthony Smith. I'm joking, guys, obviously. Anthony Smith is one of the most memeable fighters in UFC history. I think we're all going to miss him a little bit just because of his, like I said, his memeable things he says. Like whenever Ankalaev beat him, he's talking about how Ankalaev wasn't that good despite finishing him in the 1st round. And he said John Jones wasn't that good if you take away all of his attributes and he's just a man. It's like Anthony Smith is known for saying delusional things, but there's one thing guaranteed. If Anthony Smith was talking and getting ready to say something delusional, everybody was listening. He was a funny character, a funny guy to be around. And yeah, man, he had a decent UFC run. He got the challenge for the belt at least one time, and now we're going to see him on a desk as an analyst. I am happy he hung it up after last night. He got knocked out again by Zhang Mingyang. I don't think there's anything else to prove at 36 years old. So shout out to Anthony, the GOAT on paper Smith, for his amazing UFC career. And the guy that defeated him, Zhang Mingyang, I think he should take on Alonzo Menifield next. Listen, Zhang Mingyang, he's now 4-0 in the UFC. All finishes. This guy's insane. I think he's 19-6 and 19 first-round finishes. Is absolutely insane. Like you see guys like Shavkat, who at one point had a 100% finish rate, but to have every single finish in the 1st round is nuts. 1st round finish versus Anthony Smith. 1st round finish versus the GOAT, Ozzy Diaz. 1st round finish over Taco Tucos and Ribeiro. And I think he should face Alonzo Menifield, who's going to be, I think Zhang Mingyang's going to be ranked right at number 15, which is where Anthony Smith was. And Alonzo Menifield, he's coming off that win over Julius Walker, one of the most sloppiest fights I've ever seen. Before that, he was beat by Mirzakanov and Alberg. I think he was knocked out in both of those fights. But Alonzo Menifield is a veteran of the game. I don't think he's as washed as Anthony Smith, so he can give Zhang Mingyang a test in the top 15. And listen, I think that Zhang Mingyang is going to run right through Alonzo Menifield And because Alonzo Menifield is like 37, 38. He's a bit of a journeyman. Anytime he faces anyone decent, he kind of gets smoked. But, I mean, it's a good matchup. It's a good slow build for Zhang Mingyang. You don't want to throw him to the Wolves and give him like a Yuri, obviously. I mean, the dude's just going to be ranked. So, Zhang Mingyang versus Alonzo Menifield. Book it, Dana, all day long. In the feature fight, Giga Chikadze lost to David Onama. I think that he should fight Dan Ige next. I don't think they fought yet. Giga Chikadze is ranked number 12. He's probably going to drop down the rankings a little bit after that loss. I think David Onama is going to take a spot. So Giga might drop to number 14, 15. Dan Ige might even move up a spot. But nonetheless, I think Dan Ige deserves a jump up the rankings. Just not because of necessarily the wins he's gotten, more so because of how much he's been willing to step up on short notice for the UFC. I mean, this guy took a fight on 4 hours notice versus Diego Lopez, which is absolutely nuts. Then he dropped the decision to Lopez. He dropped the decision to Murphy. But then he got a finish over Sean Woodson. And, man, if you can beat Dan Ige, you're a top 15 fighter. So Giga Chikadze looks like he's at the tail end of his career. You know, he's older. He's going to be 37 this year, I believe. Dan Ige looks like he's smack dab in the middle of his prime. Still finishing up and coming guys like Sean Woodson. Destroyed Andre Philly. Had a decent scrap with Diego Lopez. Had an okay scrap with Murphy. And I don't know how Dan Ige lost to Bryce Mitchell. Was that a robbery? But nonetheless, Giga Chikadze, Dan Ige had never fought. Give Dan Ige a chance to break closer to the top 10 because he's been in that featherweight top like 10 to 15 forever, but he's never broken into the top 10. And if with a win over Giga Chikadze, he will be right there, man. And yeah, let's reward Dan Ige for his activity and for stepping up for the UFC. In the feature fight, also David Onama got a win over Giga Chikadze, and he's now on a 4-fight win streak against Giga Chikadze, Roberto Romero, Jonathan Pierce, and Gabriel Santos, I believe. I can't believe he has a loss to Nate the Train in the UFC, baby. He does have a loss to Nate the Train, which in hindsight isn't the best look, but I think David Onama should face Josh Emmett. He should be ranked number 12 or 13 after his win over Giga Chikadze because Chikadze was ranked number 12. Josh Emmett coming off that loss to Murphy, and man, it's rough for Josh Emmett. His only 2 wins in like the last, 3 or 4 years are against Bryce Mitchell, which it's Bryce Mitchell, and Calvin Kattar, who's on a 4-fight losing streak. So Josh Emmett, 40 years old, if he's going to continue to fight, it's time for him to face an up-and-comer that's going to just be cracking into the rankings. And I think David Onama might just school Josh Emmett if Josh Emmett doesn't, because Josh Emmett's one of those fighters where if he doesn't crack you on the chin, you're probably going to survive and you're probably going to be able to piece him up. But he has like little to no technique on the feet. As Lucas Tracy would say, he's just throwing the big meaty hooks out there hoping for a prayer. And sometimes he lands that prayer, like against Bryce Mitchell. So you really got to be careful if you're David Onama. But it's a good matchup. I do think David Onama would beat Josh Emmett and become a top 10 fighter in that featherweight division. I don't think this guy is necessarily championship material by any means. He's not doing anything like, wow, this guy's incredible. But I think he can be like a top 7, top 8 fighter in that featherweight division. So new blood in the top 15 in David Onama. And I'd like to see him face Josh Emmett next. Next up, we had Michel Pereira drop a decision to Abus Magomedov. That's a 2-fight losing streak for Michel Pereira after winning 8 in a row. And it's tough for Michel Pereira because it looked like he was trying to be measured last night and not gas out. But even being measured and not throwing much output, he's still gassed out. So it's not a great look for Michel Pereira, but I think he should fight Chris Curtis next. They've never fought. They're both on 2-fight losing streaks. And let's be real, they're basically both unranked. Michel Pereira should be in the rankings. His best win is who? Mikhail Oleksiejczuk? Ihor Peteria, Andre Petrosky. How did this guy ever become ranked? I don't understand. He didn't beat a single ranked fighter. He fought a bunch of cans, got a bunch of wins over some cans, and he eventually got ranked, and then the UFC kept him in the rankings. So unranked basically versus unranked. Chris Curtis versus Michel Pereira. I kind of feel bad for Chris Curtis after his last fight against Kopylov. He kind of got screwed with the head kick last second. I don't know. Either way, Chris Curtis versus Michel Pereira. Chris Curtis has an endless gas tank. Michel Pereira is a one-pump chump, so I could see Chris Curtis boxing him up and eventually getting either a late rounds TKO or just outworking and dominating Michel Pereira. Listen, man, Michel Pereira, he's just not elite. He's one of those guys that after the first round, I know people say Hamzat's cooked after the first round, but Michel Pereira is cooked after the first round. If you get this guy out of the first round, you're pretty much good. You're safe. You're probably going to scoot to a W against this guy. And just look at his last 2 fights. He does okay in the first round, and he gets smoked in the rest of the fight. So him versus Chris Curtis, I think, is a solid fight. Give one of these guys a chance to come back into the win column. And for the loser, maybe the loser goes home. Maybe the loser gets cut from the UFC. Speaking of fighters that faced Michel Pereira, Abus Magomedov is now on a 3-fight winning streak after dropping 2 in a row. And I think he should fight Brendan Allen next. Abus is going to be ranked now in the top 15. Brendan Allen's coming off of 2 losses, and Abus Magomedov's coming off of 3 wins. He just beat Michel Pereira by a comfortable decision, easy win for him. He submitted Bruno Ferreira, and I think he beat Warley Alves by decision. Before that, he dropped 2 losses to Baraujo and to Strickland. Strickland actually finished him, but since dropping those 2 fights, especially the one to Strickland, his cardio has seemed to improve, which is a good thing. Abus Magomedov is looking like he could potentially be an elite player in that middleweight division, potentially top 10 at one point, and I think he should fight Brendan Allen. I think Brendan Allen was on an 8-fight win streak before he dropped 2 losses back-to-back to Imavov and Hernandez. Very scrappy and like competitive fights. So Brendan Allen is still a top player in that middleweight division, but I do think on a 2-fight losing streak inside the top 10 or close to the top 10, it's time for him to fight down the rankings. And what better matchup than him versus Abus Magomedov? I think we'd see some elite grappling skills on the ground, and I think it's a good matchup for the health of the middleweight division. If Abus wins, man, what a turnaround for this guy's career from dropping 2 to being on a 4-fight win streak and potentially ranked top 10. So Magomedov versus Brendan Allen is the next fight to make at middleweight, in my opinion, and I think that would be a great elite grappling match. And even on the feet, these guys are both pretty good strikers. Randy Brown was able to get a knockout, the first guy to knock out Nicholas Dalby in his entire career. He slept Nicholas Dalby. It was a beautiful shot, and I think he should take on Carlos Prates next. We'll get to Carlos Prates in a second, but Randy Brown is 4-1 in his last 5. Carlos Prates is also 4-1 in his last 5. Randy Brown's an absolute veteran. This guy's been in the UFC forever, been cutting his teeth forever. He just has never been able to put together like that long win streak in order to like propel himself into the top 15, but his fight versus Brian Battle was extremely close and arguably could have went his way. He knocked out Dalby. I think he beat Zaleski dos Santos, a knockout over Muslim Salikov, a win over Wellington Turman, the GOAT. And Carlos Prates faced Ian Garry on short notice, dropped a decision, a tough loss for Prates, but he's young in his UFC career, 4 red-hot knockouts in the first year in the UFC. Then he drops a close decision to Ian Garry. Not really close. Ian Garry comfortably won, but it was a solid scrap. And I do think that Carlos Prates should fight Randy Brown next. Give my boy Randy Brown a shot at the rankings because he's been in the UFC forever. I think he deserves it. And Carlos Prates is number 13. He's probably not going to drop in the rankings, being that he lost to number 7. It was a risky fight for him to take, but he took it, and he dropped a decision to Ian Garry. So I think Randy Brown versus Carlos Prates is a great matchup, and I'd favor Carlos Prates to win this fight. He might even KO Randy Brown because, listen, man, don't let Randy Brown's performance against Dalby fool you. This guy has been cooked by Nico Price, and that's all you need to know. So I think Prates would school Randy Brown, but nonetheless, I think it's a great fight to make next. And last but not least, Ikram Aliskerov got a knockout over Andre Muniz, and I'm not even going to make a segment for Andre Muniz because I think he should just retire and hang it up. I mean, the guy's just not elite, but Ikram Aliskerov, he bounces back from the Whitaker KO and gets a win over Andre Muniz, which is a strange W because he didn't even hit Andre Muniz that clean, and Muniz went down, and he was able to secure the TKO. Outside of losing to Whitaker, he's been perfect in the UFC. Win versus Alves, KO'd Phil Halls, and then he got a finish on the Contender Series. And listen, I think it's time for Paulo Costa to stop hovering on that number 12 ranking and fight Aliskerov. They've had some beef on Twitter. They went back and forth. Paulo Costa is one of the most inactive fighters in the rankings in UFC history. This guy's 1-4 in his last 5. His only win coming against retired Luke Rockhold. He lost to Strickland. He got pieced up by Whitaker. He got pieced up by Vettori when he missed weight by 20 pounds. He got destroyed by Adesanya. He never fights. He's always campaigning around with his secret juice. He does have a funny Twitter account. I will give them that. But I think Aliskerov versus Paulo Costa, and listen, man, I think Aliskerov might finish Paulo Costa, assuming his chin holds up. But listen, Paulo Costa is not a guy known for one-punch knockout power. Who's the last guy that Paulo Costa knocked out? Freaking Johnny Hendricks back in the Stone Age. So I would say Ikram Aliskerov would maybe not knock out Paulo Costa. He would win a comfortable decision. I think it'd be a stand-up fight, as I do think Paulo Costa's takedown defense would hold up. But yeah, man, I think Ikram Aliskerov in the rankings would be something fun to see. And he came out and said that Whitaker fight was terrible circumstances. He had to cut weight a bunch of times. He was sick. A whole bunch of excuses, I'll be honest. But if we can take him at face value, and that was one of his worst performances, he's only lost to Whitaker and Chimaev in his career. So nothing shame about that. 2 top guys in the middleweight division. And yeah, this is who I think the main card losers and winners should fight next. Let me know what you guys think in the comments. And I'm excited that the UFC do make some of these matchups. Prates versus Randy Brown's a banger. Ian Garry versus Leon Edwards is a potential boring chess match. But this is what I want to see next, guys. Drop a like on the video if you enjoy these kind of videos, and drop a comment. Let me know your thoughts. Deuces.